Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton.
This felt inevitable, the lifetime ban of Jontay Porter. I don't know if you feel the same way. This, to me, was a no-brainer for Adam Silver. But I don't think it was an easy decision for Adam Silver.
Really?
Because he's now set a precedent that he has to follow. If LeBron James, for example, is busted doing anything like this, he's got to suspend him for life. Think about that. Your top players now will go by the precedent set before you. Now, a new commissioner comes in, who knows how they handle it. But here's the other thing. I've heard from some that say, well, he wouldn't have done this if this were LeBron James. Chad, I think he would have, because the DraftKings and FanDuels and BetMGMs, Prize Picks and others, they want to set this type of precedent because they don't want to be sanctioned. They want to be regarded as on the up and up, and they're pouring millions and billions of dollars into the professional sports landscape. And that's what's driving total revenue. So if you're the commissioner of the NBA, are you just going to not do what they would recommend or they hope you do? Because, again, they want the perception that they're not involved in this at all, that they are looking out on behalf of the average bettor to make sure that the odds that you're taking are fair and honest. I don't think the commissioner overlooks that point. And I don't think, regardless of player, Jontay Porter or LeBron James, Steph Curry, I think this is the same sentence. I think this is the same punishment because of the money at stake. Because I think the betting landscape would pick up their bag of cash and take more to the NFL, take more to baseball, and get out of the business if they're not going to actually take it serious. So serious that no one's going to want to get involved in this.
Yeah, and look, I think absolutely your point. If it was to this level of what we're talking about with Jontay Porter, with LeBron or Steph or
I'm not
Anthony
saying betting
Edwards
on a game.
or any young talent, Giannis, anyone, they would be banned for life. But I don't think you ever have to worry about those superstars with this because, this is, I'm sure people, and I kind of cringe as I say it too, that they're making enough money. Because what is enough money today? Nothing's ever enough for anyone. You could always make more money, but I'll go ahead and say it. Those guys are rich enough. They're making enough money. They're not going to do something. And you talked about the money at stake for bettors out there. If there's a lack of integrity within sports they're betting, that being an issue, the money at stake for these superstars with endorsements, with their contracts, with everything else, is too much for them to mess around with this. So I'm not saying it's not possible. It's certainly possible. And there could be a star one day, like a Pete Rose was a star, as a player that starts to dive into the gambling world and starts gambling on basketball. I just don't foresee it with a player like that. Here is the problem now the NBA has. And I can't be the only one thinking this. There are a bunch of Jontay Porters out there. And I'm not saying there are a bunch of guys that are doing this. I'm saying there are a bunch of guys hanging on to the back of a roster that are back and forth from the G League to their NBA affiliate, that are averaging 2.4 points per game, that are barely getting to play, that are a piece of prop bet action every night. And it is easy as hell to manipulate this and make yourself a ton of money and your friends a lot of money. If you are Jontay Porter, what this has exposed is that it is simple, very, very simple to cheat, to do something illegal, and to make a lot of money for yourself and others. And that's what Jontay Porter did. Hey, I've had this eye irritation. You might want to throw $80,000 down on this game on the under.
Right.
Because I'm going to play 3 minutes and then check out with eye irritation. And because I played, the bet has registered, and that under 4.5 points is going to hit big for you. How many other guys could be doing this? That's where your investigation starts. It doesn't start with LeBron James and Steph Curry and guys leading the league in minutes or points or any of that. It starts with more Jontay Porters. And Hutton, this is all going on simultaneously when the exclusive negotiating window for their next TV contract's about to end on April 22nd. And ESPN is not paying top dollar for it anymore. Disney, ESPN, ABC, all reports are, as of 42 minutes ago, is that is going to expire and NBC and Amazon are going to get in the game. And they are coming off their worst ever network rating year, ever, that they've had for the regular season. I think they had like 175,000 people watch one of these play-in games on one of the ratings. This is bad times for the NBA. To have this go on, Hutton, you got to send the message for that reason and give the lifetime ban that our sport does have integrity. But you got to look into other guys hanging on at the end of a roster and make sure this isn't happening with other teams.
Well, I don't think it is to this extent because the apps are going to turn you in. Look at the back end of a roster in the NFL over the last 3 years and how that's gone. You know, we're 6 years into the broad landscape of sports betting, legal, right? And it was really the NFL that just started popping off players. And it wasn't anyone, you know, that comes to mind as an exclusive starter. Of course, you know, it was Calvin Ridley, but it wasn't, you know, the Matt Ryan in Atlanta. It wasn't the top quarterbacks that just started out and didn't know the policy that the NFLPA signed off on. And while it may be simple to execute from the player's standpoint, I think it's very difficult to get away with right now. Now, the skeptic in me says if it were a top star, behind the scenes, they're going to work the channels together in partnership to make sure that it's not to the level they just got with Jontay Porter. You know, you get flagged one time. Porter was flagged twice. We didn't hear a peep about it the first time, right? We heard it the first time, to my memory, Chad, the first time we heard about the Alabama baseball coach was the first time it was flagged for it being over, well over the attempt to bet at a sports book window of over the $500 minimum or maximum.
In Cincinnati at the ballpark.
Yeah, yes. And to my knowledge, that was the first time they noticed it. And then they started the investigation into about that pitcher not playing, all that. I do think, again, the skeptic, they would handle it different behind the scenes. I'm saying that the sports book, that's also, they want those guys playing. I'm more likely to play a prop on the top stars of the game than I am Jontay Porter. Porter made it easy to get caught in this. Look at how easy it seemed to be to catch Nicholas Petit-Frere for betting on something other than football on team property.
It's easy to catch someone. It's also easy to manipulate. And if I'm the NBA, I know they don't want to. These is kind of a don't ask, don't tell scenario. Is there an Ipe Mizuhara out there? There are legal books going on too, and there are a number of investigations happening into those. Am I to believe that Mizuhara is the only one connected to a pro athlete
but that has
a gambling problem?
That's been going on for years.
Right. And the federal investigations that are going on simultaneously into these, you better hope that you're not the one that, unlike Mizuhara who stole from Ohtani, the evidence we have now, unlike that scenario, that there's not someone working in cahoots with a Jontay Porter that is on the end of a bench that could easily manipulate prop bets. If you want to see prop bets disappear forever, you're going to have more of these stories like this. If there's enough of them, they'll cut it out of a league first.
But there will be there's always somewhere to bet on something that just seems foolish. You could bet on the WWE results that are scripted.
For like $10 max bets. But
you can still gamble. You can
There's
still,
limits.
you know what I mean? You mentioned Ohtani. That's a prime example of what I'm setting up here because Major League Baseball has a precedent with Pete Rose. If Ohtani had been caught, he's done. They have to do it. And he's the next Babe Ruth. He's the Babe Ruth of our generation. That's why I look at the NBA and think the same thing. Regardless of player, the commissioner just said it's up to him. He has sole discretion on lifetime ban or game by game. You're suspended indefinitely. And he chose this route to send a message. And I think he would have had to do this regardless of the star power that we would have seen. But again, does it get out that I keep mentioning LeBron, and I don't think he's doing anything, Chad, but a star that is the face of the league is flagged one time and then flagged twice. Do you think they are reporting that to every media outlet possible, saying, hey, we're on the up and up right here? I think the first flag that comes up, they're doing something behind the scenes, and you never see that. Because that is also big money for Vegas. That's big money for the apps.
I have no reason to believe that those big superstars would be doing it, but if they did, they'd have to follow through on something. This is a great PR move by Adam Silver. This was the right decision. To me, it was an easy decision because there's no consequence to your league that Jontay Porter has a lifetime ban. None at all. And you're sending a strong message, and you're doing it at a time where you're asking for a ton of money from networks for your next TV deal.
The thought from
so
ESPN,
you want to make sure that you're showing some teeth and that your sport has integrity, and that we're not going to be talking about whether or not the NBA is fixed for the next 5 to 10 years following the, I think it was 2007, the Tim Donaghy whole scandal.
He went to prison.
And now this. You don't want stories like this while you're at the negotiating table trying to fleece networks for money to carry your product. So it's bad timing in that regard, but I think it's good timing for Adam Silver to show he means business about this and to cut it out.
So the discussion, Donaghy's a good example because he's been on with us twice, I believe, over the years. And we need to reach out to him and get him on the show. And he probably says the same thing now that he was saying then, maybe even more, that, I mean, he pointed out that he wasn't the only ref doing it, and that's the integrity of the sport. And for the money that's coming into certain superstars, I'll point to Michael Jordan, who just loves to gamble.
Yeah.
And so there are always players and that hook, that rush that you get. But Jordan's, if he's doing anything, he's going to bet that he's going to put up 40 shooting left-handed Larry Bird.
Do I think that Michael Jordan bet money on himself and the Bulls?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Do I think that he ever tried to throw a game?
Right.
Or come out injured? No, absolutely not. But did he Pete Rose it and bet on himself? Probably. I mean, through some bookie somewhere.
He just has that drive to be
Yes.
great, but great at everything. And he had Charles Barkley, his fuel to get to a blackjack table. You know what I mean? That regardless of salary, some guys just have that itch. Now, I don't think those guys are trying to do anything from a criminal nature to throw and fix games, but we have seen this a long time. And honestly, it took 6 years to see this banned for life. And now we've seen it twice pop up. First with Ohtani in the last month, and now with Jontay Porter. And I don't disagree with what you're saying. There are others doing it. But I think it is on the companies, these billion-dollar apps, these tentpole apps for DraftKings and others, that they're going to make sure that at least perception is they're looking out for everyone that's on the app. Because big money's at stake there, plus the advertising dollars. Silver made the right call, and as long as he's commissioner, he's going to have to make that call. And I think you have to continue to do this.
If it's going on, you got to stop it. And there's an easy scapegoat with this. It's the guy who's guilty of it, and it's a guy that barely plays, that no one even knew. So great. That's a good example to make. The hope is to have bigger examples to make if you're Silver.
Just running through the recent infractions, gambling related. You had the federal bank fraud charges with Ipe Muzahara. There have been 10 NFL players last year suspended for various gambling-related infractions. And then you had the season-long suspensions for 2 or 3 Colts players. The NHL, they suspended, this was last fall, Senators forward Shane Pinto for half a season for activities related to sports wagering. You have the former Jaguars employee, Amit Patel. He was sentenced to 6 years in prison for embezzling more than $22 million from an NFL team. J.B. Bickerstaff is talking about and coming out publicly and saying every single game there are people right behind the bench talking to players about what they're doing from a gambling perspective. We're just getting started. And I think this is only the professional leagues.
Yeah.
Now consider it from a broad scope of college athletics.
It's all to me about how much do you want to know and what raises suspicion.
Yeah.
And it's going to take suspicious activity, suspicion-raising bets, play, weird things happening with injuries like this with Jontay Porter to really get everyone's attention and to put a stop to it.
Chad, the report from ESPN about Bill Belichick got everyone's attention.
I'm really confused here. I thought coaching mattered in sports. I thought it mattered in the NFL, but apparently it doesn't. 2 examples of this. The Patriots with Tom Brady and the Patriots without Tom Brady. That's one example. And the fact that Bill Belichick, who is 15 wins shy of the all-time NFL wins record for a coach, can't get a job? No one wants him? Even with the fall-off from Tom Brady, you're telling me Bill Belichick's not qualified to lead one of these NFL teams and can't get a job? And that's what Seth Wickersham, Jeremy Fowler, others, they're reporting at ESPN says that essentially in Atlanta, he was voted off the island by everyone there. They went through the reasons for other teams. The Titans, someone there said they were skeptical about his ability with offense and how lackadaisical he was with his approach with his coaching staff in New England and with Mac Jones. Look, I understand all of these concerns, but I also think that we have entered an era in a lot of sports, not just the NFL. They're not the only ones guilty of this. It is way more important to be nice than good. Bill Belichick is not nice. Bill Belichick can be a bull in a china shop. He is going to tell you what he thinks. He's not necessarily going to care about your opinion, and that goes to ownership. That goes to people in his front office working around him. That goes to assistant coaches and everyone else. He's going to be Bill Belichick, and he's going to do it his way. And even if his way led him to being 15 wins shy of the all-time record in the NFL, that's not good enough for today's owner in a lot of circumstances. Now, this article also points out the one possibility for him is Mike McCarthy getting fired in Dallas, and Jerry Jones would be the type that would hire a Bill Belichick. Maybe that happens a year from now. But this is proof, once again, I'm not saying these hires, Dave Canales and Brian Callahan, I'm not saying they're bad coaches or bad people or they're going to suck in their respective jobs. But what I'm telling you is those dudes are nice. And it is better to be nice than good at times. Bill Belichick, good, proven good over a long period of time. These other guys are nice. Owners want both. They want nice and good. But if they can't get the good and they don't know, they'll go with the unknown nice as opposed to the known good. And that's why Bill Belichick doesn't have a job. That, and I think a lot of these owners think that he's washed at this point in his career, which I don't necessarily agree with.
Oh, well, I mean, the report that you had the Patriots calling the Falcons saying, hey, don't hire Belichick.
Which has been refuted.
By immediately.
And not just refuted, but they said the opposite.
Right.
Someone close to Kraft said, no, he called the Falcons and said it would be a good move to hire him.
Chad, here's what I think happened. NFL owners, because I think behind the scenes, in a private setting, at a dinner, in an office, Bill Belichick's nice. I don't think he comes across that way with NFL films. If you watch the seasons, on the practice field, he's an asshole.
Yeah,
you know.
In the film room, he definitely is.
Yeah, two things. I think number one, he's not going to budge from the power, the roster decisions, the coaching staff decisions with another general manager. And ultimately, the owners that we're hiring throughout this process start with Washington, Carolina, the Titans with Rand Carthon, John Snyder in Seattle, Terry Fontenot in Atlanta, Dan Morgan, you have Tom Telesco and others. Chad, the owners chose to stick with their general manager structure, the hierarchy, where you have someone overseeing football operations, and then you have the head coach overseeing the roster. Instead of Bill Belichick or Mike Vrabel coming in and overseeing all things football, and we're going to put a different key on our door downstairs, and upstairs is separated from us, meaning you have management and you have the business side, and then you have the football side, and you need a different key code to get in between those two elevators or staircases. I think ownership chose to stick with more of a structure than giving a coach total power. Meanwhile, a year ago, Denver did exactly that. And we've seen what Belichick has had this. He's made the roster decisions he's had, mainly, I would say, the coaching decisions that he's made. And history is not on his side in regards to this. I still don't understand what he did with Mac Jones. But I do understand what the owners are telling us, because they had two interviews. One was on Arthur Blank's yacht. So I don't think you're inviting a guy down for an interview and then have a second interview where he's going to be put in a room with your general manager and your team president if you didn't like him before, whenever you flew him in. So I think where it is important to I think you can gain an extra year if you're more of a nice guy than, a prick. And we saw that firsthand with Ken Wisenhunt here. Had he just looks someone in the eye while passing them in a hallway, he probably doesn't get fired in year 2. And keep in mind, he was hired 15 months prior. So I don't know why Belichick didn't get him.
Well, that's what I don't
shocked
get.
by it.
Like,
well,
what?
I think it's the structure. He's telling Arthur Blank, I'm not going to listen to Terry Fontenot. I'm not going to budge on how I'm doing this. This is my overall philosophy on how I want to build a roster. What I want to do with certain quarterback decisions, what in the draft and free agency, the focus on where you're going to spend your money. Belichick wants all of that control.
But see,
Arthur Blank nearly did it.
Now, according to the report from it's Don Van Atta Jr., Wickersham, and Jeremy Fowler, they claim in the report that Belichick was totally fine not being the GM. He said, you can be the general manager, and then I'll be the coach.
Right, but what do we hear here?
The Falcons voted him off the island because they didn't believe him.
Well, but
right?
The same storyline popped up here in Nashville with Mike Vrabel. The reports from Diana Rossini. He's not looking to be the general manager. What they're not telling you is they're looking for full control. They don't want the title, but what they don't want to do is have to go out and find the 10 players on Tuesday that are coming in for a roster tryout because your backup linebacker who's on special teams has a torn hamstring. Tore up his Achilles, and you got to figure out what you're going to do on specialty. They don't want to deal with that. Get the players in. I'll go work them out. You identify. You handle the scouting department. Is more or less what they're saying.
And that's why the Commanders, their new ownership, it goes down the list of why others didn't want him.
Yeah.
And it was very simple with them was we want it run like the 76ers and the other organization they run where there's a general manager and the coach works for the GM.
Yes.
So they didn't even approach Belichick about it for that reason, knowing he wouldn't be comfortable with that.
And I think, what were the reports out of, was it Los Angeles with the Chargers?
He just said he didn't want to go to L.A.
Well,
the report says Belichick wasn't interested because he didn't want to live in L.A.
Well, he was close. He was mentioned as being close to going out there for an interview. Spanos maybe comes to him. I don't know. Vrabel interviewed there, and what was that? The storyline there was,
too big.
He's too big. How does Vrabel not come across as an alpha? Too much of an alpha.
Yeah. The report is that some feel that Vrabel's size can be intimidating and that owners don't like to look up to a guy. Yeah. It's like me with Preston, the GM here at Sixth and Peabody.
Shout out Vrabel.
I wouldn't hire a guy that tall because I don't like to look up to people.
Yeah, but
that's what the owner was saying.
But 6 years prior, he's praised for being that type of personality and having that quality. And by and large, every coaching decision was praised.
I'm not the biggest Belichick fan right now.
Yeah, but
I mean he's been great in New England for a long time, and being somewhere that long, you're going to run out your welcome eventually. And it just started when Brady was gone and the offense wasn't good and they couldn't find a solution at quarterback. Even as I'm not the biggest Belichick guy. I can't believe that all these other candidates were seen as better options than Bill Belichick right now. That's what the fact he didn't get one. I'd say the same about Mike Vrabel too. But I really do think that there's something to this with both guys, that there is a rep out there about, first off, the Raiders, their reasoning was, we tried 2 Belichick disciples and they sucked.
Yeah.
So we don't want to go back to the head of that tree after this. I think there's something to the fact that those guys can just rub people the wrong way, and people want to feel good about themselves, and they don't want someone that's going to be sandpaper, and they want someone that's going to agree with them. And so you might go for the younger option that's just dying to be a head coach that gets along with everyone and is really nice, and that's going to help them get the job. Again, not to say they're not going to be good, some of these young coaching hires around the league, but I do think owners are starting to err on that side.
And by and large, I feel like the coaches today, right now, they don't want to be general manager. They want to give me control of my coaching staff and let me go coach the roster, the 53. Let me have plenty of say and power over the 53. Ultimately, that's the general manager.
They want a good relationship with the GM to be able to tell them what I like in a roster, and then for them to just kind of know what to do and go do it.
But when the philosophies mix up, that's whenever you have the power struggle, like Vrabel had with the Tennessee Titans. And I think there is something to be said for the head coach has someone to point to and blame with roster decisions. It's not my coaching ability. Player sucks. I didn't bring him in. That's the underlying sentiment.
You know who didn't think too much of the article? The ESPN article? A guy who hosts a show and his guys on ESPN, Pat McAfee. He and his crew today kind of teed off on it and didn't think it was very credible, the reporting.
Based on certain phrasing of reports?
A lot of it feels like pure speculation, was one thing said. Some of it seems like bullshit. That was directly from Boston Connor. A lot of anonymous reporting, maybe some speculation. Feels like not a bad time, middle of the offseason, not a lot going on in the NFL to just float something out there like this.
And it's one source on that.
And Pat McAfee said on his show, if they're burying Bill, I'm glad we're not a part of it. And again, he's referring to 3 ESPN reporters being a part of it, but saying, I'm glad we're not a part of it as the Pat McAfee show.
Well,
it's a new era where Pat McAfee and his guys essentially have carte blanche. We saw that with Norby Williamson. We're seeing this now, where they are directly going after the reporting of ESPN reporters.
Well, here's what makes it just it does come across as a little quick to just go with. It's an unnamed source saying Robert called Arthur to warn him not to trust Bill. And the unnamed source did not speak directly to Kraft or Blank. So are you talking to a secretary that took the call and then put him on hold? Just calling up the cell phone at that point.
Yeah,
you're talking at a owners meeting in the fall, or you're doing something.
That's what McAfee said. The biggest thing that people are talking about is how allegedly Kraft told Arthur Blank not to hire Bill. And that's when Boston Connor jumped in and said, some of the things from the article are clear BS.
Well,
because the Patriots immediately said it's BS.
Here's the other thing that makes me feel like I'm leaning more towards this and what McAfee's saying. The whole Vrabel connection during the Hall of Fame week in Week 6 of this past NFL season, there was a close person to the Kraft family, someone tight with the Kraft family, which could be a Kraft family member for all we know. So and they said that Vrabel's a slam dunk hire if he's let go by the Titans, if he were available and Belichick left, that there would be a trade. That's why the trade discussion was there, because he got up there and he praised the way, the Patriot way at the Hall of Fame where he was inducted into. A source who spoke to 2 people, a close Kraft friend and a longtime Belichick confidant. That could be so many. That means it's within the organization, but it could be the same source that was dead wrong, because they already had Mayo under contract, saying that he's the coach.
Yeah, it was done.
So how close are they to these guys? That's my question about it. It could be the same person. Doesn't have to be, but I can point to one just a handful of months ago that was not true. That was wrong.
I get the sense that McAfee and his guys are not unlike a lot of sports fans right now. And honestly, some in media, I'd put our show, in that category also. They have a healthy level of cynicism about media.
Yes.
Even in sports.
That's a good point.
Right? It's not just, boy, this is sourced and reported, and ESPN put it out, so it must all be true. Here's an ESPN show saying, I don't think it's true. This is show, and this is from Awful Announcing, broadcast on ESPN, and a midday show on ESPN spent 10 minutes discrediting a well-sourced ESPN report on the same day it was released. It speaks volumes about how fractured the entertainment and reporting sides of that company are, and that there's not a lot of synergy right now at ESPN with that. I think this could be used to describe the sports landscape in general. There is a fractured relationship with entertainment and sports reporting. There is a fractured relationship between the fan and reporters and reporting. I mean, I think it's all fractured to an extent because there is a healthy, understandable doubt, cynicism right now in media in general, but sports media also.
Well,
and I think a story like this, Hutton, that's immediately refuted by Robert Kraft's camp.
Yeah, that's Stacey James.
That throws a lot of water on the fire.
Stacey James, longtime media relations the head of all media and PR there for New England. It's how he phrased this, I think, is spot on. It would surprise me to learn that owners sometimes lament to those close to them when their teams are struggling. But Robert Kraft never, he said it would not surprise me, but Robert Kraft never questioned Bill's character or trust when talking with Arthur Blank. Trust is important to Robert. He wouldn't have employed Coach Belichick for the past 24 years if he ever questioned his trust. I would imagine that to be spot on. And if you're looking for an example, check out Orchids of Asia Day Spa.
Good one.
So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole torpedoing. If Robert Kraft wanted to get at Bill Belichick, you fire him during the season. You embarrass him. You don't let him walk and then take all the time they did to part ways and then let him just go straight down to Atlanta, Georgia, or wherever and team up with another
It
NFL
seems like
team.
a pretty respectful parting of ways, the way it was handled.
Yeah, and the way the Patriots...
Especially if he wasn't, as reported by ESPN, if he's not going around crushing Bill Belichick right now at this point in his career to teams, then I think he was okay with him getting a job somewhere else. And according to Kraft's camp, even was supportive of it, telling him,
now,
hire him.
Here's going. This is in the favor of the report. There are 3 reporters on this, right?
Don Van Atta Jr., Seth Wickersham, and Jeremy Fowler.
All legit. All legit. Don Van Atta is the investigative reporter at ESPN. Wickersham has done great work. And Jeremy Fowler has been, from Pittsburgh. He's been all over the place covering the league and is right behind Schefter of the names I see reporting from ESPN on a weekly and daily basis. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That's in favor
now,
of the
Wickersham
report.
has a complicated history with the Patriots because he wrote that book that a lot of people have shot holes in.
Yeah.
So there is some thought that there's some bias, some anti-Patriots bias from Wickersham based on the book and the response to it from a lot of Patriots people. So that part of it, you could see a conflict.
Is it interesting they have their investigative reporter, Don Van Atta, on this?
Yeah.
To me,
this is something that you would want that level of reporting on.
Well, to me, though, some guys get named because they have one piece of information they're contributing to the story. I'm not saying
I am fascinated by, Hutton, we've worked for gigantic radio corporation. Then we worked shortly for sort of a ma and pop type operation, right? That was more locally owned and smaller before OutKick was sold to Fox. Now we work for a huge conglomerate in Fox. And we know how these issues sometimes get resolved and sometimes don't. I'm willing to bet that Jeremy Fowler, Seth Wickersham, and Don Van Atta Jr. are on the phone immediately with their editors saying, WTF, get this dude off the air talking about our reporting that I spent months on. This SOB better shut up about what he doesn't know about because that is a legit report. They are angry about it. There's probably someone demanding to go on his show to defend the reporting, right? That's saying I'd go on there and be glad to talk to him about it on air. And this stuff has to get worked out behind the scenes, one way or the other. And it may just be that Pat McAfee is so damn powerful he doesn't have to answer to anything. And they keep a buffer around him where no producer's going to talk to him. Nothing's going to happen. He keeps saying what he wants, which is fine if that's the case. But I don't think this is something you just put out there and then it's just, oh, well, okay. That's just Pat being Pat, saying that our reporting is BS. I don't care. Not a problem of mine if he's on ESPN.
I'm looking to see if they've tweeted anything. Fowler first is what I'm looking at. He's just putting out NFL news today on what players are signing where. Andre Dillard to Green Bay.
Well, I guarantee you that their bosses are telling them to not engage in a public battle with McAfee and his guys. It's a new era. It's a new era.
And it's Fowler retweeting Wickersham that's promoting the story or pushing the story on social. Jeremy Fowler then tweeted, sources believe Belichick had momentum coming off Arthur Blank's yacht, but he finished behind a trio of coordinators for Atlanta's job with not many alternatives. We detail why, Robert Kraft's role in this, and what's next for the most successful NFL coach. That's a great synopsis of what this is. The other part, too, is this is intriguing. The idea, or maybe a fact, that they're putting this in there, that Robert Kraft, if Tom Brady goes on to have success, and then Bill Belichick leaves and goes on to have success, who's to blame? This is what the source told them. That's the reason why you would torpedo the deal in Atlanta. Because Kraft would be to blame.
Is it weird that I believe Kraft in all this in his camp?
Most people.
He just doesn't seem like the type of guy who'd pick up the phone and say, "Don't hire this guy."
Well,
after that long of a time, I just don't.
There's no doubt they were frustrated with Belichick. They're sitting up in the owner's suite, and you can see Jonathan Kraft mumbling over himself like this is just awful, a terrible decision. I don't think there wasn't just something going on. I don't think Kraft is going to do this, and Arthur Blank's just going to be like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'm going to go get Raheem Morris instead. And I'm going to look like I don't know which way I want to go with the decision to hire a coach, either Hall of Famer or a guy getting a second chance.